Hey fellow shredders, I'm here working for G3, Jesse Wilfley, trying to take the mystery out of setting up a split board. I've been doing this a lot and it often takes way more time than it should. So we're going to try to cut through it pretty quick and show you some tips and tricks to both get the best stance on your board and the best enjoyment out of the whole thing. Alright, so you're going to need several tools to accomplish this today. You're going to need a number 2 Phillips, some thread lock, I use the blue stuff, a reliable measuring tape, a little marker, some wax. I'm using stuff from Wend. They make great product. Volet plate pucks, and your bindings. I ride Sparks. So one of the things you want to do is you want to have a nice flat working platform. I throw a pair of 4x4 blocks on a table and then throw some rags over the block so that way your board won't move while you're working on it. A nice flat platform to work on. So what you're going to do is you're going to measure your board tip to tail and figure out the center of the board. That'll give you an idea of where the stance is relative to the shape. So this is the center of the board mark, roughly. This is the center of the side cut. This is the center of the stance. So that is the third hole to third hole right here. The stance that I have set up puts the center of my stance just forward of the center of the stance and just back of the center of the side cut. Depending on what board you're riding, you're going to want to play with this. But identifying these marks or these locations on your particular snowboard is going to help you figure out where the ideal place is for your bindings. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to measure the length of the effective edge or side cut. You want to be mounted probably somewhere accurately within that. And then also the other thing we're going to do is look at the camber profile of your board. You're going to want to have your bindings in the correct position in relationship to the camber profile. Nowadays you see pretty much all kinds of different camber profiles, from classic camber where it's just a curve from tip to tail to a mix, a total reverse, to a combination. If you have a smaller stance, you're going to want to keep your front binding in the same position and then move your back binding forward. If you have a bigger stance, you're going to want to have that ideal front binding position and then slide your back foot back. So what we're going to do, you're going to measure your total length, divide that by 2, identify where that is on the middle of the board. We're going to look at the end of the effective edge or the side cut, go to the beginning, measure that, divide that in half, measure and mark at the center of the board. The other thing we're going to look at is look at your insert pattern, and you're going to want to look at center to center. We have 5 holes, so you measure third to third. That tells you the average size stance. So once we've done that and identified that, we'll look at that camber profile again. Best way to identify that is put it on a flat surface. See where it touches, see where it touches. Once we've identified where that is, both in the side cut, the camber profile, and the total length, we'll take our pucks. We're using these from Volet. You got your adjustable, slide this way. These are different sizes, so this width is greater than this width. So if you find you want to move your binding position closer to the center of the board and away from your heel side edge, closer to your toe, you'll turn this way. So on the toe side edge, we'll have your flat edge closer to the toe. These guys can slide according to how you have it centered, according to which way this is pointing. And then you want to set your angle. I ride regular stance, about a 22.5-inch width, about 15 forward, and a slight positive in the back. Slight positive in the back if you have any MCL problems, which all of us that have been riding for any length of time tend to. I ride a slightly positive back foot. Mainly it relieves stress on my MCL. So once we've identified our ideal stance, our centers, we identify the holes that we want to use on the pattern. So I'm going to take my heel side puck, number 2, figure out which way I want the puck angled, set my angle, thread lock. The amount that you take your bindings on and off often shakes your pucks loose over time. So I always throw a little bit of thread lock in. A little bit does a lot. You don't need a lot. Just a little dab on the threads. And you'll just want to go 2 turns or so. Just tight enough so that we can still slide it back and forth, but so that it doesn't move. We'll do our toe side. Make sure your angles are the same. Same thing, couple turns, just so that the dial is in the puck far enough to where the angle is not going to change. So now we've got this set. This is free to slide. This is free to slide. And handy dandy puck jig. If you've got one, awesome. This is the time to use it. If you don't, we'll take a final measurement and that'll tell you how far apart these need to be for a standard spark setup. So we'll slide that on so it fits nice and tight. Tighten it down just a 1/4 turn so that it doesn't move when we slide the binding on. Pop this off and you'll grab your front binding, slide it on, make sure it sits in there nicely. We want it to slide on easily. If it binds when you slide it on a dry setup such as this, it's going to be too tight. As soon as we throw water and ice into this situation, it's going to be more and more difficult. So we'll see how that fits, test it before we tighten all our screws down. And it should fit in there nicely. It shouldn't move back and forth too much, like this is way too much. So you'll slide your binding off, you slide your puck forward, maintaining that angle, make sure it's happy. Okay, this is ideal. We'll slide this off, and we'll tighten this down. Test it one more time now that it's been made tight. So now we'll move to the back. We've already identified our ideal hole pattern. Slide our jig on, take your jig off, grab your other binding. Once we've figured out where these guys go, we'll tighten this a few turns so it's snug but can still move. We'll put on our puck jig, make sure it slides on nice and easy. Take your jig off, grab your other binding, slide it on. Now, we've just mounted a split board. So, now it's time to get out and shred. If you could do a few things for me when you do, I'd appreciate it. So what you're gonna wanna do every day before you go out into the backcountry to enjoy this awesome piece of equipment is to check your local avalanche advisory. When you get out in the field, make observations, see where you're going, make a travel plan, have a plan with your friends. Wear a beacon, shovel, probe, know how to use those things. Wear a helmet. This is a sport that you can enjoy for a long time and do your best every day to mitigate hazards that you have control over.